Thank you so much to everyone who commented on the last video about my hand when Zeke bit my hand. So it's doing great. My hand healed perfectly, no problems at all. Antibiotic took care of it completely. And Zeke and I have patched up our relationship and we're good standing as well. It was quite a thing. It was so swollen, but it did take a little while to go down, but it's working fine. I haven't had any problems with it at all. So thank you so much for your concern. It was very touching. Every time it rains, I have to get out buckets and all sorts of stuff and put them underneath this, or a whole cockpit just absolutely gets soaked. All right, so that's my project for today. Well, I'm trying to fix the deluge of rain that falls down from these stairs down into the cockpit pretty much every time it rains. It's a big old mess. Fountaine Pajot had an idea, but they kind of crappily implemented it. This is the top step here, and it sits on top here like this, right? Just like that. So I managed to pull this off. It's glued on, and it was kind of difficult to get off, but I got it off. All right, well, this is what we're left with up here. So this teeny little trough is supposed to take all the water from here as it flows through. And what happens is it just fills up and goes through these two corners here and then just drips down. I mean, like there's a torrent that goes down. And you can kind of see why. These holes are completely plugged. They're totally plugged. And you're probably like, okay, those are holes. Where do they go? Well, great question. They go into these tubes, and these tubes are the supports for the stairs. And then it exits down here in these little holes, and it's supposed to then travel all the way through here and sort of exit out there. And that's not what it's doing at all. So what's really happening is the water is coming down here and just pouring straight down. This thing's just not working at all because the water's never even getting into these tubes. All right, so here's my plan. What I want to do is obviously open these up, but I want to make them bigger. I'm going to drill them out as big as I can get them, sort of route them out so that they're the same size as the top of the pipe, and that'll help a lot. Then I'm going to create a dam here, certainly on the sides here, on each side, to keep the water in this trough. Now they put this black stuff here, believe it or not, is really Sika. It's this white Sika. It's just been in here so long it's turned black from just schmutz and mold and stuff. It's kind of gross. So I'm going to pull all that out, and I want to make sure that this comes all the way over to the edge to catch that water. They stop right here, and it's so easy for the water to just go right around it and over the top. It's just very poorly implemented, in my opinion. And we had this is a little bit of damage to the bottom of the seat. I'm going to have to fix that with some epoxy. That'll be easy enough to do. But that's my idea, is to make this bigger so these don't get clogged, and then set this dam up so that we make sure the water gets to those holes and goes down the tubes. I'm continuing to work on this step in the drain. I just wanted to take you in and show you what I've done so far. I've got it all cleaned up. I have the step off, but take a look at these holes. So this is the original hole there, and there's my finger sort of as a comparison. It's about how big it is, right? It's pretty small. I can't even get my finger in this thing. This is what I did. I woggled that thing out, and now it's huge. So we've got this big, huge pipe here, so why not woggle it out pretty much to that same hole size there? So that's what I did, and I also cut this back this way on this edge here, so it's like a reverse funnel, I guess if you want to think of it that way. So anything that impacts up here isn't going to impact inside here. It'll fall away and into the tube. And then the tube runs down here and then down to these holes. Now, I watched it last night as it rained, and it did go all the way down here, which is great because there's a little bit of a lip here. So the water ran along here, and I think this is the concept. It's supposed to kind of go on either side of this post, which puts it pretty much on top of this area here where the hatch is. And I think they were thinking it would get into the hatch and then drain out there on that far corner. But at this point, I think we're getting pretty close. I'm going to woggle out that second hole and make it just as big as the one I've already done, and I think at that point we can put our seat back on. I need to make some dams up there as well to catch all the water so it doesn't just flow off the edge there. And then we should be pretty close, and hopefully I guess I can test it with a hose easily, but soon to get enough rainstorms. I'm really curious if we can keep this cockpit a bit more dry. I've been working quite a bit on this step and the drainage issue here, and I've actually tried several different things that I think's going to work. In the interim, it's actually rained a few times, and we've had this step off, and it works really, really well. Having these big holes here, 95% of the water is going into these holes, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Very little bit's actually going over the top. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to use some butyl tape on this surface right here. The surface goes all the way across here so that it can contact this surface on the actual step itself, and that should seal it all the way across. Now we still have our gaps on the edge, and we still need to really lock down this center piece here, because this is kind of what carries all the load, and it's screwed in with 2 screws, but it was glued in before. For that, I have some caulk, and I have 4200. This is the removable version, but it's still supposed to seal and have a pretty good bond. I'm afraid that if there's an issue or something, I'm going to want to take this off again. And if I use 5200, it's going to be a huge pain in the butt to get it off. This should seal, should adhere it. Also, in the future, if I need to take it off, I should be able to. All right, well, let me go ahead and I'm going to lay down the butyl here. We're going to lay down a bit of caulk here, which will contact this rib here. And then on the edges, we still have our gaps, and I'm going to fill that up with our caulk here and try to get a nice smooth little dam there to kind of keep the water from just going right over the edge right here. This will all be a little more clear once I kind of put it all together. So let me go ahead and get it all set up. We'll put this thing down and start adding some caulk. One of the first things I actually want to do is take all of our screws and use a bit of butyl around them, because I did find that a couple of them were actually leaking a little bit, and I want to get some butyl sealant around all of the screws so they don't leak. Next, we're going to need to fill these gaps in between the step and the edge here. And it's going to be a thing. We're going to be filling it with caulk just to get just a bit of a dam there. I did notice on the Tana that they do that from the factory. That sounds like a really good upgrade to me. If it gets over that dam, that's an awful lot of water coming through here, and I don't know. Maybe that's just not a thing, but we'll leave it like that for now. If we need to build it up later, we'll hit it again. So it is raining out. You can hear and kind of see it out there raining. It's a pretty good rainstorm. Check this out. That's impressive. Virtually nothing going on there. There's a little bit of drippage in the front of the step. That's to be expected. Little bit here and there, that's just because the wind blows it, or that's just literally coming off the front of the step. That's impressive. So then down here, there's the water coming out of the tubes. Look at that. It's pouring down here, going over here. It's ending up actually on the far side of the tube over there. Kind of see those steady streams of water on each side, and then down here. Oh yeah, and look at the water. So there it is. That's what it's supposed to do. Wow, that's impressive. I'm working on the hatches for the hard Dodger here over the Helm. These hatches are not marine quality at all. In fact, I've had to get the parts for them, and they're for an RV at best, or like a car or something. So the hinges have absolutely fallen apart. The pin in the hinges just absolutely rusted away. The clasp up here that holds this thing down, this sort of latch, has the same issue with its pins as well. They're just cold rolled steel and they just rust. Unfortunately, a couple of problems. One, I'd love to replace it with some actual hardware, but I can't find anything that would actually fit except for these. And the company that made these things is either out of business or they don't make this thing anymore. Can't imagine why. They're junk.
Junk.
So absolute junk. So I'm trying to get the hinges out in the back. I do have a replacement set of hinges for this one. I don't have a replacement set for the one in front.
Oh, no.
So that might be an issue. I might have to sort of rebuild them. The problem is that these screws are so corroded that I got one out of the 4 and it did not want to come out. So the only way to get these things out is to really drill them out, and it's always an ordeal to drill something out. It's a huge pain in the butt. So that's what I'm doing. And then I've got 2 screws here I have to get out as well for this thing. Same deal. And then get this guy off, then replace all the bits, and at least we'll have one of them that works. That'd be great. Actually, this one would be a good one. If I'm gonna get one of them to work, probably this one, because you can reach it from the helm, which would be great. You wouldn't have to go forward to open it up. Because once we get our enclosure all the way around and we have our enclosure up, it can get pretty hot and steamy inside these things, you know?
Yeah.
If it starts to rain or gets weird. So
Okay.
I'll let you know how it turns out.
Sounds great.
I've been working very hard on the bimini cover as well. Both of these windows, I've been through them very carefully. I've replaced the latches and the hinges and everything on them.
Oh, they look really, really
on
nice. Look at how nice those look. Look at all the screws. And...
Yeah, so they're looking better.
Wow, that's
Definitely
great.
looking better.
Yep.
Before they were so cloudy and screwed up, you really couldn't even see the sails through them, which that defeats the purpose. So I want them to be good. I want them to be usable. And since we're getting a full enclosure, we're going to want to be able to pop those windows. They'll kind of pop up like this and work as little air deflectors and bring air into this area. So if it gets to be later in the morning, it was cool in the morning, and so it was very nice to have the enclosure, but getting a little warm in the afternoon, you can pop those things, get a little air through. That's what they're for. But before, the hinges were so rusted out, they were completely useless. Just been working on things, trying to make them look nice and trying to make sure that everything is ship-shape up here. I know this looks a little crazy, but we have something very special coming up for the binnacle. It's going to be awesome. But first, I have to pull all of the instruments out of the binnacle, everything actually, and I'm going to buff it. I'm going to go through and completely buff the whole thing, and then I'm going to ceramic coat it so it just shines and looks awesome. Then I'm going to put everything back in, and then we have something very special. I'm very excited. I'll show you that when we get to it. But this is another reason for doing it as well. Check this out. So one of these little Garmin little square things up here, check that out. So that's just completely falling apart.
Wow.
And water is leaking in. Now I've already had to reseal both of these, but these two are bad.
Right.
So I don't want any more water in here. And so that's a kind of a ancillary reason why I'm doing this, is just to go ahead and reseal everything. The problem is that this, even shaped as a funnel, directs water directly into the rear guest cabin, and it puts it right over the bed, and it makes a big old mess.
Right.
So it took us a while to figure out where the water was coming from, but finally did. It's the binnacle, and stuff was coming through. So we fixed the leaks from the 2 things that were causing it, which were these 2 guys were leaking. But look at this one's even missing a screw.
Yep.
So
why is it that like almost every time we look at screws, there's every
always
other
screws
one's missing.
There's always a thing. So anyway, I'm gonna pull them all out, reseal them, but I really want to get through and buff the whole thing, because you know, this is the one place, this is where you drive the boat from. So this is what you've got your hands on things, and this is when you're kind of working all the controls, and you spend a lot of time up here, of course, on passage. I would like this to be a very nice place. We'll bring you back. Let me get all this work done, get these things out, and we'll do a bit of buffing up here and show you how it turns out. This is Franny from the future, but I wanted to show you how this dash and our helm actually turned out. So if you remember, went through and polished the whole thing. I ended up ceramic coating it when I was done, and it looks amazing. I took all of the plastic bevels out. I put them in 303 protectant in a bag for like days, just to soak them really well, and that helped a lot. And let's see, what else? There's this. This is our new wheel. Now this is a Carbonautica wheel. It's just barely fits. It's one of the smallest ones they make, but it works great for this boat. It's not carbon. They do make a carbon fiber version. This is a glass-filled nylon version of this wheel, and I really, really like it. It's not nearly as expensive as the carbon, but check this out. I love the spoke pattern, first of all, but you have this huge open area. So for our wheel, with our autopilot, it's connected directly. Even when the autopilot is on, the wheel is spinning backwards and forwards like this, which means if you're trying to deal with something on the chart plotter or one of these other gauges, you're totally playing Frogger as this thing's moving past you, you know, and you need space, and you're like, Well, having this big open area really, really helps a lot. The old wheel was stainless steel with Alcantara around the edge that was ripping and coming apart, and it was rusting really, really bad. It was so horrible. It was so terrible. And the spokes were really close together. So you kind of had to reach around, and it was always kind of hard. This is much, much better. You can almost always get to something here while the wheel's kind of moving back and forth a little bit, and then get out of the way before you get clobbered by the spokes. It's nice. It's got a great finish to it. The other wheel was round, so it just had a tubular steel rim all the way around it. This one's actually flattened, and it's got a much nicer feel on your palm. And sometimes, I'll tell you, when you're up here and you're trying to maneuver kind of in close quarters or something, it's nice to have a nice flat surface instead of a round surface that's just sort of going to frog your hand a bit, and you can end up with bruises on those round steel frames. I really like this wheel for that as well. I went ahead and ceramic coated it as well, and that's why it still looks perfect. It looks exactly brand new, and this is quite a ways into the future. Now, let me show you something else I did. This is the original Conquest compass that we've had on the boat forever. Now, this whole surround here had turned really yellow. It was terrible. You can kind of even see still a little bit of it, but I polished it up, and I think it looks really nice. Also, the surface of this thing had gotten super hazy, so hazy that you couldn't even see most of it. Like this bit of it, couldn't even read. So it's very worthless. So I pulled it all apart, took it completely apart, and I polished all of this. And now it looks great. These are kind of expensive. They're $250 or $280 or something. It's pretty expensive. So I didn't want to just go out and buy a new one of these if I could get this one to work. So it's great. So it looks great, looks the part. The rest of the gauges are all doing their thing, and they're working really well. We did end up replacing this gauge here, mostly because the lens was pretty bad on it. But we've been having a weird problem with this engine control anyways. It restarts itself hour-wise. I have to be very careful about logging the hours for the port engine because this thing is not doing a good job at it. It'll just be fine. Like over the course of a journey, it will continue and it will pick up where it left off, pick up where it left off. It's great, great, great. And then you let it sit for 2 weeks and it's lost all of its marbles again. It goes back to like, I don't even know what it goes back to. Like, it's just a weird place that it goes back to every time. I replaced this hoping that would fix it. We've replaced the module on the engine. Both of those. I have a sneaky suspicion something is wired incorrectly. But anyway, that's a project for another day. So we replaced that guy. This one was in good shape. No cracks, no fuss, and just polished it up a little bit. The engine controls here, I polished this up really well and then also ceramic coated that as well. With all of that, polishing this guy, polishing everything, and ceramic coating it, the Helm has stayed just brand new looking. It looks great. I also added, and I think this is very important, our reef lines. Since this is a catamaran, we reef on the numbers. And so there's numbers for beating and reaching in the manual. So I printed them all out and I put them right here. And also our MMSI number if we ever have to talk to the Coast Guard, which, oh, that's never happened. So yeah, that'll never happen. Yeah. So that's very important because you don't want to be at 20 knots of apparent wind and thinking, I think I probably am supposed to be reefing about now, but I'm not really sure, and blah, blah, blah. And then you get to 25 and you're like, I wonder what reef I should have in first, second. This tells you exactly what it's supposed to be. So just copied this down from the manual for the boat. I feel a lot better. I don't have to go searching for it or try to get it on my phone or whatever. So this is perfect. So I think this has turned out to be a really nice place to be now. There's something about the amount of time you spend at the helm and that you really want your helm to be a nice place. And if you look on fancy pants boats, they always have the beautiful wheel up there and they have all their instruments and it's always such a great place to be. It's because you spend so much time here. And the last thing you want is stress and distraction because something's broken or it's just gross or it physically hurts to move the wheel or whatever. whatever. I'm really happy with this. I think the whole thing turned out really, really well.
We are currently in Annapolis working with a company called Chesapeake Sail Makers. Chuck, the owner, is helping us with the binnacle cover. We will get into more of the sail making and what we are having done in the future episode. Of course, Zeke has to inspect his work as well. What is it? Are you excited? Yeah. What is that? That's a lifeline. Yeah. I think he approves. We are also working on having our helm completely enclosed. This will allow us to be able to be outside at the helm and stay a lot warmer. We are really, really looking forward to this. The trip north that we went on was very brutal at times with bad weather and cold weather. So this will be really helpful in keeping the rain out and the warmth in. We're really looking forward to it. Join us in our next episode as we continue on all of these projects. You'll have an opportunity to see how others have helped us get ready to go on our journey south back towards Florida. As always, thanks for watching until the end, and until next time, safe travels. Bye.